And good morning, everyone. 8:15. You're watching Extra Shot. Leave your comments in the box below. We have Cornelia here doing a little Raising of the Roof. We were listening to Who in our ear before
Shoop by Salt and Pepper and Creep by TLC.
Wow. And Creep. Yeah. That's all I know.
Wow.
Just keep it on the keep
Don't
it
stop
on the
that
down low. Walt Gray, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Are you guys short today? Did you need another body in here? What's going on?
Why can't we just invite you, Walt Gray?
You're the honorary girl, Walt.
Okay.
You know this.
Honorary
He's the honorary
Welcome
girl.
to The View. I'm Walt Gray.
And he calls it The View. When
I do
it is
call it The View.
Extra Shot because we do have a view here on The View. And it's kind of like The View airs on ABC right here on ABC 10. So we're going to dive in today and talk about the NFL, about politics, about the protests that are happening.
That's why I'm here. Okay, now I get it.
President Trump, the comments that he's made. So let's get right into it. I want to start off with the newest information that's coming out, and this is obviously the debate that's been happening around the clock the past, I don't know, couple of days, definitely the past couple of months with Kaepernick. But we'll get into all of that and bringing up Kaepernick because in Sports Illustrated's cover that was released this morning, we did have a chance to talk about this on Morning Blend. Go ahead and break this down for us, Walt Gray.
Yeah.
So Sports Illustrated came out. They've obviously used Photoshop to put all of these players together in different sports across the different leagues. And what are we seeing?
Well, you're seeing a unified professional sports, and in this case, they all unified against what the president tweeted about, sons of bees, and that the NFL owners should fire anybody who takes the knee. And so I think that that's what Sports Illustrated is saying. I mean, obviously they put all those people together that you're seeing.
Yeah.
But that really, it really galvanized, I think, over the weekend in terms of, whoa, okay, the president is not happy about
He's not happy about players taking a knee because
Correct.
he's saying it's going against everything our country stands for and going against the national anthem, and all players should stand, put their hand over the heart, and salute the flag.
Right.
That's one argument. There's another side, and it's the whole reason why Colin Kaepernick of the NFL decided to take a knee. How long ago?
It started last year during the preseason, and the purpose. So I like to say there's now two different protests. There's the one that Walt references, especially with the Sports Illustrated cover, where everybody is coming together against the president's statements, having a problem with the protest, versus the initial reason for the protest, which was to protest racial inequality and police brutality and all of the things that are happening within our criminal justice system. So there's two different ones as of right now that it seems, which it shows off in the cover. Because as soon as I saw the cover, I was like, oh, I know why Colin's not on there, because Colin, what they're protesting was different. Like they're coming together against the recent issues, as where Colin doesn't really fit into that conversation, in my opinion. So I wasn't surprised that he was left off of that cover, but he shouldn't be left off any cover, because this is why we were even talking about it.
I was certainly surprised, because when I first saw it, it was the first thing I had asked you, because when you talk about taking a knee, and while this protest and this form of protesting, silently protesting, has happened, for years, I've really been dialed in since Colin Kaepernick, correct?
Yes.
I mean, for me, I've been dialed in. So when I didn't see him on it, I thought, well, is it because he's a free agent right now? So Sports Illustrated goes, oh, he's not an official.
I think it's to Cornelia's point that this is something else other than what Colin did. It seems to me that, when Colin first took the knee and all this was going on, and it was actually the second game he had done it when they discovered it. He had done it before and no one had picked up on it. But I don't know that the two sides are any closer together. I was just watching a viral video of a Washington Redskins fan burning all his gear because of what's going on in the NFL and this disrespect to the flag and the disrespect to veterans. So that camp is still very firmly in place with, if you disrespect the flag, you're disrespecting veterans who died. And so there's that side of it. And then you have the other side, which is, I think, always been there, but hasn't expressed it as publicly, which is athletes, especially athletes of color, who are now coming out and saying, hey, we need to have more of a discussion, and we're not happy about some pretty big things here. So I don't know that it's brought two sides together in many ways. It's just identified the differences between the two.
Let's show another side of the Sports Illustrated cover. So this is the internet has taken control, as the internet likes to do, and when the internet feels a certain way, and all different sides of a debate, they go ahead and put their version on different things. So this is one version of what they're saying. We fixed the problem. So the internet, part of the, one side of the debate saw an issue here, so they added Photoshop. They added, used Photoshop to add Kaepernick into it. So there's what they think the SI cover should look like. Easy fix there. But then I want to talk about the Cowboys. So they used the silent protest in a different way. They used taking the knee in a different way last night.
I thought about how did they figure that one out, where they were going to do the knee, but yet for the national anthem. Correct. Then for the anthem, lock and stand, so that it would be some form of a protest that might be not as offensive to those who are offended as had prior ones. And let me go back to Kaepernick real quick.
Yeah.
He may be in a better position to play now than he was before, because basically, in terms of if you're an NFL owner, you can't say, I'm not going to have the problem playing for me. You got the whole league and owners now taking knees. So, so this ultimately, this protest and this cover of Sports Illustrated may help Kaepernick's chances of playing in the league again, I think.
So do we think that Kaepernick, and we have different opinions here, but do you think by him sticking with this for the past year by taking a knee each and every time, and while he got a lot of backlash in the beginning, still does, a lot of people now are finally seeing, is it timing? No. Do you think it's timing, or people, what is it now that the president has chimed in about it?
I honestly still don't think people see the reason why he's doing it. Because if you take into account what Walt said, a lot of people feel like it's disrespectful towards the flag and towards veterans. Each person that has sat up until this past weekend has said, this has nothing to do with the flag, this has nothing to do with veterans. This is about racial inequality, police brutality, and injustice. So even though people have been saying that the entire time, people have still adopted their own personal feelings onto why people are doing it. And that still seems to not have changed. I think what, to Walt's point, is it does give Colin Kaepernick a little leeway to get back into the NFL, but it does water down the original reason why this was even happening in the first place.
That's a really good point, that you're able to see that that's true. And I think there's about 5 or 6 different things in this stew, and I'm glad, Keneally, you pointed out a couple of the differences. The other one, which is maybe the biggest point, is the freedom of speech. And if you have an opinion, you are free to share that opinion. And that's what this country is all about. And I've seen veterans who are hardcore veterans who have said, you know what, it boils down to freedom of speech. And that's what we fought for, to allow people to be able to share these feelings like that. And I don't know that you could fire someone for freedom of speech. You're protected by that. The only concern I had initially when all this started with Colin was, can you express your complete views while you're on the clock, while you're at your job? I don't know many jobs where you at your job can just go, screw it, this is how I feel, because your boss would say, hey man, you're on my dime right now. If you're feeling that way, how about after you clock out, you go down to the street corner and go ahead and protest all you want, and I support your right to that and your freedom of speech. However, when you're kind of on my dime, I'd sort of prefer that we just focus on the job. That has never been addressed to me about in terms of protesting while at your place of employment.
Well, do you think being an entertainment, though, is a different
there's leeway,
type
of
employment?
There's leeway there, because if you want to protest on the job, and the NFL players are at their job, and it is entertainment,
and they have a platform,
therefore
to influence.
It's up to the person who's paying the ticket to the movie, to the play, to the theater, to the game, to go, oh man, this isn't quite what I really want to see today. So it's then someone's complete freedom to not participate in viewing that and or in person or on television.
Sure.
Everybody is kind of free to roll which way they want, good, bad, reaction, not reaction. That's totally, it's open season now on all of that.
And then it speaks to the point of, if we talk about doing things on the clock, at no other job are we required to sing the national anthem at work. Like
True.
when we come in here, I don't have to sing the anthem. Remember, we used to pray in schools. They snatched that out of schools.
Yeah,
quick.
the school prayer is something very similar to that,
Pledge
too.
of Allegiance. We don't have to stand up as kids and put our hand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. That's not required, and we don't have to do that. So the question is, when did this even come about? Because a lot of people don't know, the national players weren't required to come on the field for the national anthem until around 2009.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that's always been the case. This is fairly new. So what was the change in saying, okay, so now we're going to require this, and why is it required here in sports but in no other position?
But is it a requirement to have to stand for the
is.
Pledge of Allegiance? You did a Verify piece on this.
I did it on the, I did a Verify on whether or not NFL players are required to stand for the national anthem.
Correct.
And they are not required. It's up to them to stand, or there is no rule in the NFL about the national anthem and standing for that. And I will tell you, this goes back to the mid-'70s. And I remember watching some college basketball games, and this was during kind of the Black Power movement of the mid-'70s. And there were black players who sat on the bench during the national anthem. So this is by no means new.
Yeah.
And this was kind of post-1968 with John Carlos and Tommy Smith on the medal stand at the Olympic Games, where they, during the national anthem, they raised their fists. And, so again, this type of protest is not new.
And we have a lot of comments from our viewers. Thank you so much. Keep chiming in. Sherry Caruso Hill says, sports do not belong in politics. Fans pay for the salaries by buying tickets to games, watching on cable, etc. And I prefer to watch the sport and not see their personal agendas. Betty Dotson says, no, if I want to hear about politics, I turn on the news station. Janet Piper, no matter what the reason is, just plain disrespectful. Jimmy Escato, one day Kaepernick will be a hero. Doug Beard, 100% disrespecting the flag. So, this is it's a passionate topic for everybody.
Yeah.
But again, like Walt said, this isn't new. And if you remember, people hated Muhammad Ali when he protested against the Vietnam War.
Yeah, he refused to go into the draft, and on religious and I think conscientious objector status, and they stripped him of his title. They stripped him of his heavyweight championship, and he was out of the sport for a couple of years. So, it's if you want to protest, you can. If you choose as a fan to not go to the games anymore and hit him in the pocketbook for this, if you don't agree with that, that's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. I think everybody's kind of adjusting position now and waiting to see what happens. And I was listening to some commentary this morning. We're wondering what next Sunday's game is going to be like, or this next Thursday night game, whether this continues or whether the statement's been made and it loses a little bit of its juice if you continue to do it, or what the next form of protest for this might be.
Well, you can say losing its juice, but look at and say Kaepernick as an example. Continue to take that knee, and people have had different opinions throughout until. When was that turning point? Was it when President Trump came out and said, oh, okay, this enough is enough, when others started to follow Kaepernick?
It jacked up this week when the president tweeted. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. And
yeah, let's play that soundbite. For those who may not know what we're referring to, let's go ahead and play that.
You love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field.
Yeah, it's
how shocked were we when we heard that? I mean, we can have different opinions, but to hear our president use those words, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the president was making his statement. He was speaking to a crowd in Alabama, and he is just like, I'm going to go for it. I think he is very concerned about what he's been seeing lately, and that was his move. That was his move, maybe to squash it. I think if that was his idea, it went the other way. I mean, clearly it went the other way with people who are NFL owners who have even been his supporters, like Jerry Jones and Bob Kraft, came out and said, that wasn't cool
The
what you said.
tone wasn't
Yeah,
cool.
because the owners have to be cool with their players too. So again, the NFL, through no fault of their own, has been thrown into this. They did not have a rule book to go by, a playbook, what to do when something like this happens. They're just like, they're on the roller coaster with a lot of people. And no matter which way they go, if they said, you guys must stand for the national anthem or be fined or fired, man, I tell you, that would blow up on them. And if they allow people to take knees and protest, then it might blow up on them with a mostly white base who are supporters of the president. So the NFL really can't win in this scenario, and they're just getting blown up.
And to point out, now there's 2 boycotts I'm seeing, because initially people of color, a lot of people of color, not all, boycotting the NFL, not watching because Colin Kaepernick essentially got blackballed. So you have that group of people who are like, I'm not watching at all. As long as he's not playing, we're going to turn the TVs off. And now you have the group that's saying, I don't want to see politics in football. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not watching as long as people are kneeling. So to Walt's point, I think the NFL is just going to take a hit across all sides.
They can't win.
They're not going to be able to win in this because you now have 2 groups of people who are boycotting for their own reasons, and the reasons won't be resolved. Because on one side, if you're boycotting because you're sick of seeing people taking a knee and you feel like it's disrespect, those people aren't going to stop taking the knee because the first reason for the boycott hasn't been addressed, which is racial inequality, police brutality, and criminal justice reform.
Let me ask you this, Cornelia. Are you somewhat feeling good about the fact that you've seen a lot of white America come together to support what you saw over the weekend in terms of white players, white owners saying, okay, I understand a little bit better now and don't like what the president said about all that? Do you feel that there's been some movement of goodness that way?
Well, I like that more people are talking about it because, again, you can't solve something with your ears and your eyes closed. However, I think the reason why a lot of people are protesting now isn't the reason for the protest.
Right.
So to me, people are just pissed because the president is telling them what to do with their organization. As the NFL commissioner, if he said, you need to fire this and you need to do this and you need to do that, it's unpatriotic. I took that as they just don't want to be bossed around and called an SOB. Not, he's saying this, but people they're protesting for racial inequality, criminal justice reform, because at the end of the day, they've been silent on that issue as well. Now, you have some people who, like Greg Popovich, Steve Kerr, who have been speaking on the initial reason for the boycott from the start. So in regards to them standing up and being vocal about it, I feel like, yeah, that's something that I would like to see. But this weekend, to me, wasn't about what the original point was. Right. It was about, as an organization, we should have freedom of speech, whatever that may be, and we're going to come together as a league to say, you can't tell us what to do. That's how I took it.
Well, and I think with the initial pushback, yes, they don't like to be told what to do, and also the fact that he was so quick, he as in our president was so quick to respond on Twitter and calling players who have the right to take a knee SOBs, and that they're fired when you can't legally fire someone for not standing for the national anthem. But when Charlottesville went down, it took a couple days for him to call out the white nationalists who were protesting in Virginia. So is that where we're seeing? Well,
see, that's another part of the mix here. The other part of the mix is what Cornelia is talking about with the initial protest with Colin. And then the second wave, which we just saw. Then you have the president who weighed in, and then there's the Charlottesville thing. So there's supporters of president, anti-president, Greg Popovich, Stephen Curry, LeBron James,
police brutality,
Sports Illustrated. You have so many things in this jambalaya going on right now that at the end of the day, you may ask people, what is it you're angry about? And they might just go, and not necessarily know. Yeah. It all comes back to people should stand for the national anthem and not disrespect the flag, and that's where it's all going to come back to, yet it is your constitutional right, and the NFL doesn't even have a rule about it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. So I don't know. It all comes back to the same thing, I think, again, is either people, support the president or don't, and that's again coming out again in a big way on both sides.
And then more comments. Cheyenne Cody, folks need to educate themselves about our national anthem. Peggy Gamba says this has nothing to do with race, no place for it on the field. Brenda Cowan, they didn't kneel during the national anthem. They made their point before and then stood up for the anthem. I'm assuming she's talking about the Dallas Cowboys. And then Robin Sinclair Colado says protesting racial injustice should not be political. The players are not disrespectful. So again, all sides. And it's
going back to
sides.
The way the Cowboys handled it. Is that what those who are against those taking the knee, is that what they wanted to see? Go ahead and take your knee whenever you want, but not during our country's national anthem.
Yeah, I think
where you have the freedom to do it. But then what does that do for those who are for taking a knee? What does that do for the cause? Because now, go do your thing. We're going to ignore you if you're taking a knee, but you're going to stand for the national anthem. Is their point going to get across if teams start to do that?
Well, I think because, again, you have the two different protests. So maybe as the Cowboys organization, their point of protesting and taking the knee before the anthem was for X reason, because if you took the knee during the anthem, you're pretty much saying, I'm taking the knee for the initial reason for the protest in the first place, which is racial inequality, criminal justice reform, and police brutality. So I took it as they were trying to make a statement, just not the same statement that was the initial statement. They made a statement because it gravitated towards people. There were boos. People were booing. Some people were like, yeah, viewership was up to see what everybody was going to do. So people, all eyes were on the situation. But again, there's so many different angles to this, and there's so many different sides, and people have so many different reasons that at this point, nobody's ever going to be on the same page.
Okay, let's ask this question. For those who are Team Kaepernick in this case, fighting for everything you just talked about, what is the hope at the end, if there is ever an end to this protest? What is the hope at the end? So you take it back to the 50s and Rosa Parks and her getting on that bus and sitting in the front of the bus, being arrested. A year later, buses were desegregated. There was an end to that protest. So many more protests happened after that. But there was sort of that punctuation mark, like, okay, we got what we wanted. What is the hope for the Kaepernicks of the world?
Well, I can't. Again, I can't speak for him per se.
Sure. Just
looking from the outside, to me, what I took from the whole thing is a lot of people don't really care about certain things if it doesn't affect them.
Right. If it's not their
if it's not in your world, you just don't know, and that's just not your struggle. So when people do certain things and they force you to pay attention, like via protests, you at least have to acknowledge that it's happening. Now, if it makes you uncomfortable, you can either say to yourself, it makes me uncomfortable, I'm gonna get mad, I don't wanna have anything to do with it, I want you to stop. Or you can say, this makes me uncomfortable. What is it that they're talking about? Like, what is it? You can at least start to ask questions. Or you can say, I don't want them to protest, so maybe I need to help them so they can hurry up and shut up and get over with this protest. Because I haven't heard that side to say,
how can we help?
Yeah, let's hurry up and get this on. Okay, so if there's injustice, cool, what is it? Let's work to get it taken care of so you can stand up and go back to respecting the flag. So there's
trying
different,
to shake it up.
Just trying to shake it up. Because if you don't like it, then let's fix it. Let's hurry up and get this done.
I think if Colin were to do all this again, I don't know that he'd do a ton different. I think, at practice wearing socks that say pig on them maybe just threw some gas on the fire and caused some people to go against him and his cause that he didn't necessarily need. Certainly wearing a Fidel Castro t-shirt in the Miami Dolphins postgame, you infuriated people in Miami, because if you say you're a supporter in Castro in Miami, your life expectancy is about 30 minutes after that. So there have been some things that maybe he did that he'd like to do again. He did, I think, bring the issue of his concerns up, and he's admitted to that. He said, okay, if any team hires me, I won't be doing the knee thing anymore. Wonder if that would change now, because everybody's doing the knee. But, he brought his stuff up, and I think he publicized it, and everybody knows. And I think he's accomplished what he set out to do.
Well, and it's sort of like, okay, he started it, and now he's at the root of it, but now everyone, I think, in his mind, and this is me just assuming if you were a human being in Kaepernick's cleats, that you'd be pretty proud of where this is right now. Again, just assuming. But I've been seeing a lot on social media, and these are people who I follow, just friends, and it's something that sort of shook me because it says, leave all of this negativity off of social media. And one woman said in particular, don't talk about things that we cannot control. And I thought to myself, well, whether it's this protest or other protests, isn't that what protests are for? Because you can change. And I'll use Rosa Parks as example as one of the examples. These are things we can change as a society. So when you say don't talk about it because we can't change it, that's just not true.
Some people draw the line at disrespecting the American flag, which disrespects veterans, and that's where they have this. Rosa Parks got on a bus and wanted to sit where she wanted to sit. You know, if she had done something...
The law said she couldn't sit at the front of the bus.
Right. If Rosa Parks had started her protest, and Cornelia, you tell me if I'm wrong or not, but if she had started her protest by going in front of an American flag and lowering it or messing with the flag, that would have brought holy you-know-what down on her in the state of Alabama back then.
Well, yeah.
And it still did, because black folk were not supposed to sit anywhere but the back of the bus.
Right.
When she didn't sit in the back of the bus, I think it's kind of a similar thing. People are like, what? Because nobody does that.
And I think it's kind of the same idea because, again, a lot of people, when Rosa, like how people are associating Colin Kaepernick's protest to the flag, even though he said it wasn't, people associated Rosa Parks protesting to other things because people attach it to what they're comfortable defending. So if I hear somebody saying we're fighting injustice and injustice makes me uncomfortable because I'm going to have to address it, then I'm going to attach it to something that makes you look like you're doing something wrong. You're the bad person. Mm-hmm. But again, you got to remember, Rosa Parks, they played for years before the bus boycott happened. She didn't just sit there. She wasn't the first person to sit in the front of the bus. However, she was at the time the best person to use for that position. And again, when you talk about things needing to change, y'all got to remember the majority of Americans who weren't of color did not like Martin Luther King, did not like the civil rights movement, and thought he should have stopped doing it and did not agree with civil rights. So stuff's gonna make you uncomfortable.
He did it the best way he could for that time by peaceful protest. Right. He was like Gandhi. It's like, I'm not going to start fights and riots. I'm going to do it in such a way that we'll be able to move the needle a little bit. We're going to give the white people at the time less stuff to get angry about. We're going to peacefully protest. We're going to turn the other cheek. And in 1960s, that was the way Martin Luther King chose to do it, I think based on what he had seen from Gandhi too, and it definitely worked. It got everything moving in the right direction with as little resistance as you could for that time, even though that seems like there was a ton.
And a different, but sort of along the same lines, and it was one of the comments from one of our viewers where it said, one day Kaepernick will be seen as a hero, and that could be the case, that could not be the case. Well, you know, time will tell, but you always say history writes itself. And it's one of those things that's going to have to be, after all of this calms down, where does everyone stand in their position?
Right.
But I guess the other question too is, well, if they don't want him kneeling during the national anthem and others kneeling, what would you rather them do? Good point. I think when you ask that question, it's always wrong because you're always attaching yourself to, okay, well, I don't like that you're not respecting the flag. Well, then what do you, and this is something you always say, what do you recommend that these who feel this certain way do to get their point across? Because in my mind, this has caused us to talk about something that's been needed to be talked about.
If it wasn't about the flag, you wouldn't be talking about it and whatever good that's going to come from this. You know, it all started with Colin in this particular case. I mean, obviously, you've had many other people who have come up through the years who have Jackie Robinson. I mean, come on, Jackie Robinson. That was huge.
Change always comes when you shake it up a bit.
Got to shake stuff up. And then again, offer your recommendations. Like Megan said, if you do agree with change, but you just don't like the way it's done, okay, let's put our heads together and work together. But in the meantime, even with Colin Kaepernick, he's donated almost $1 million to different charities representing some sort of cause. So even while all of this is going on, he did still hold up his part of the bargain, because he did say, I'm going to donate $1 million to different things, including like Meals on Wheels, and he chartered a plane and sent it to Somalia for the food famine. So, you know, like, say what you will, but people out here working. Like, let's get to work.
The way to do it.
Yeah, let's get to work.
All right, everyone.
Yeah, I guess if it's initially about police brutality, has that situation changed in the eyes of the black community? If this was the whole thing started, if this is what it's all about, and I have many friends in law enforcement, and they're excellent law enforcement people. There are obviously going to be some people in certain stressful situations that don't act the way they should, but has this caused that situation to be better in the eyes of people in the black community? Because if that's what this whole thing's about, you need to go back to that.
And do we expect to hear from law enforcement at some point in this conversation? Because we haven't.
Probably not.
Have we heard from? I haven't heard from them.
Yeah,
only
no
on social.
Yeah,
a lot on social.
So I think that's the next leg of this. This is a story and a protest that has a lot of legs. And I know you guys are commenting. We see your comments, and we will continue to chime in. We are out of time. Join us in about 15 minutes on your television set. We are with the news at 9. Until then, everyone have a good day. Keep talking, and we will see you tomorrow, 5 to 7 on TV, Morning Blend, and then more Extra Shot at 8:15. Bye, guys. Thanks.